What's going on, guys? I'm gonna let you guys in to a little secret that I might have never talked about, or you might have never heard about. And look, here's what's interesting, that you can actually apply this into every single part of your life. I am a hardcore believer in the idea that you have to test and experiment as much as possible. When it comes to business, and when it comes to health, and when it comes to family, when it comes to psychology, when it comes to finances, when it comes to all sorts of things, if you really think about it, almost everything is constantly tested. Everything is always experimented. Everything is always analyzed. Everything is always, to a certain point, always questioned, right? Whether what is right, what is wrong, what is the best, what is not the best. What I've come to realize that I tend to do a lot, and what I've learned that a lot of very successful people do, is that they are constantly experimenting within every single thing that they do. Now, you might ask yourself, like, why would you do something crazy like that, right? Well, look, if things are working, then maybe it's not worth shifting anything, right? You don't want to break what's already working or try and fix what is already working. But what if you could test slightly within different parts of your life to just optimize your day a lot better? And that's really what it comes down to, right? Is like, how can you optimize your day to the point where you become so efficient that you actually can create the results that you want significantly faster? Specifically speaking, what I've been testing a lot in very recently, which is something that I don't talk a lot about, is my health. So I was diagnosed with a condition called Hashimoto's, which is basically called hypothyroidism. You guys have probably never heard a lot of these words, which basically means that your thyroid glands, your thyroid, it's the organ that we have right here that basically produces all the hormones that your body needs. And so the thyroid, if it functions the way it's supposed to, it produces as much as your body needs. When you have a hyperthyroid condition, it means you produce too much. When you have hypo, it means you don't produce enough. So I've had hypothyroidism, meaning I don't produce enough, for about 8 years now. And I have tested, when I mean tested, I mean I have tested so many different things with so many different doctors, things that are considered free, to actually paying for exams, paying doctors, paying for supplements, paying for things like cryotherapy or red light therapy or hyperbaric chambers or things like that. The free stuff is, for example, fasting, whether it's for 24, 36 hours, or eating nothing but whole foods, or eating low carb, or eating only keto style, or eating only high protein. Like, there's so many different things that you can do when it comes to testing, when it comes to your health. Specifically, I've tailored my life and I've tailored this condition to try and optimize myself as much as possible. And honestly, like, this condition that I have has been probably my biggest crutch over the last 8 years as an entrepreneur, because my energy can be really high, and it can then just tank to the point where I don't want to do anything. I can't think about what to do. And so I've gotten to a point where it has really affected my performance when it comes to just being fit and running and lifting weights at work, with my kids, like, to the point where sometimes I just don't want to do anything, right? So I've had to, like, really prioritize that side of my life, the health side, to really understand, like, what is having me not do the things that I should be doing, and what things should I be doing to actually optimize myself. So again, the reason why I'm talking about my health and I'm talking about, hypothyroidism, you might ask yourself right now, like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've experimented so many different things throughout the last 8 years to try and get myself to a point where I can operate ideally at a 9 out of 10 energy level every single day, no matter what. Even if it's a holiday, if it's my birthday, if it's a 16-hour day, if it's a 5-hour working day, whatever it is. And I've been striving to get to that point, because I really believe that anybody out there can function at a high energy every single day, no matter what. I've seen it. Like, I've seen people who operate from that level, and it only happens when everything is on point, right? Your sleep is on point, your food's on point, you're healthy, you don't get sick that often, you're taking your supplements, etc. Whatever the case is, like, you're actually on point. Some people are able to function like that for the most of their lives without really having to do much. They just are either have been healthy most of their lives, they've never actually put themselves in crazy positions. But there's a lot of us out there who have these type of conditions where it just makes it very hard. And look, I'm not here to tell you this so you can feel sorry for me, or we can feel sorry for other people. It is difficult and it is hard, but at the end of the day, we have the control, and we have not just the willpower, but we have the intangible power, which I call God and the universe, to actually help us figure out, like, what has us not do the things that we should do to stay healthy. Throughout the years, I've gotten to a point where I've had many days where I feel phenomenal and I feel great, but I've also had moments where I digress and I go weeks without actually being able to function. I'm sharing this because today is one of the first days that I actually feel somewhat energized at such an early time. Like, it's 8:50 in the morning right now, and I feel like all jacked up right now. I wanted to share this because 3-4 weeks weeks ago, I got on antibiotics. And I got on antibiotics not because I was sick or I had the flu or anything like that. I was actually feeling the best I have ever felt in my life that I can remember of, at least since being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, consistently every single day. I'm working with this alternative medicine type doctor, right? So obviously they have their medical license and they practice medicine, but they are more of a functional doctor where they try and do things outside the norm, not through medication. People who have hypothyroidism usually tend to take something called levothyroxine, which is a synthetic type medication that it gives your body the hormones that it needs, right? So it's basically a shortcut. I've chosen not to take that path because I figured, like, if I am taking this shortcut and taking this medication, then I'm not actually fixing the root cause. And in the long run, I could actually end up getting worse, and it will affect me in ways that I can even imagine right now that could actually potentially be worse. Although I was feeling good, the doctor was like, hey, like, we ran some additional tests that I've never really done before, just to like really get down granularly, like, hey, you're feeling great right now, but like what else could be there to like really get you to the next level? We did a stool sample and it was okay for the most part. And here's the crazy part. We did that test and we also did a blood work exam. My blood work was like pristine. It was like so good. I would say if I had to rate it, I'd say like easily over 90% out of 100 good. There was one section that was still kind of off, which is my TSH levels, which is again correlated to the hypothyroidism. And so although that level is still not where we need it, it's the lowest it's ever been, which is great. What we found out though through the other exam is that I have something called H. pylori. H. pylori is basically a bad bacteria that's in the gut that gets developed either through food, toxins that we are surrounded by, whether it's environmental or, you know, whatever the case is. And so she's like, look, this thing, this H. pylori thing can basically stay in your gut for 10 plus years, 20 plus years. Like, it is really hard to kill it. If you continue doing all the right things, it will probably eventually die out, but it can take forever or it might never die out. This thing tends to be correlated with people who have hypothyroidism. So although you're feeling good, you could potentially feel even better if we get rid of it. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, talk to me. What should we do? And she was like, look, I would never recommend this. I normally do not recommend antibiotics because it really messes up your gut, because it not only kills the bad bacteria, it also kills the good. But these 3 antibiotics that she was going to put me on, they're like, they have a very strong chance of killing it. And I was like, okay, so if it kills it, then I'll actually feel even better. She was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. I don't take antibiotics. I stopped taking antibiotics for honestly years. Like, I just don't do it because I've learned a lot about when it comes to health because of the condition that I've had. And I know it's not good. Like, you should really only take antibiotics if you're like dying. Like, it's not necessarily good for you. And so I was like, you know what? If that's what it's going to take to get me from an 8 out of 10 every single day to a 10 out of 10, let's try it. And so I got on antibiotics. Long story short, they gave me like 3 antibiotics to like really try and destroy it. Guys, like, I was wrecked for like the next 2 weeks. Like, I was running 30 miles a week. I went from running 30 miles a week to running 15 miles a week for the next 2 weeks. And then last week I did only 6 miles. I couldn't. The first 2 weeks I was on antibiotics. I got off of them. My energy was just low. And last week was my first full week off of them, but my body was still taking time to recover, right? Because it had to regrow all the good bacteria. What does this have to do with anything? What does this have to do with, you know, creating the life of your dreams? What does this have to do with making $1 million a month? What does this have to do with any of this? And the point of this is that you sometimes have to test and experiment the things that you're doing to see what is working, what is not working, and how you can make things work better. And I might have completely rambled on and I could have gotten straight to the point about this, but I want you guys to think about this. Where in your life have you ever tested or experimented things where even though they were working, you know, you wanted to see like, hey, what if this could work better, right? And you'll probably notice that when you've done that, you've actually gotten way further ahead than if you would have just stayed at the same place. And look, there's a chance that you might digress, right? If you test something that's wrong, but at least now you'll know whether it worked or didn't work. I just really thought this was a really good point to bring up because right now I am like, this is the best I think I felt in many, many weeks since I started taking antibiotics. And I think my body's still adapting. I think it's going to take me another few days, maybe another week to like really feel optimal. I'm excited and hoping that this H. pylori bacteria died and I'm probably going to feel better than I've ever felt. This is your reminder, guys, that you get to test, and you test because what if what you're doing is not actually the most optimal? What if you thinking you're right is actually not the best decision? That's all I got for you guys today, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.